night, Don Jr. leaks his own emails. The freedom not to vaccinate.
Liberty is higher than safety and security.
And
for never taking drugs, here's a big high five!
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is pushing back the August recess, cutting it in half since the GOP is way behind on its legislative goals, specifically health care and raising the debt limit.
As a result of all this obstructionism, don't have enough time to address all of these issues between now and the originally anticipated August recess.
16 service members were killed when a U.S. military plane crashed in Mississippi, all but one of them Marines, and most of them from a unit based in New York. The KC-130, a refueling and transport plane, took off from the Marine Corps Air Station at Cherry Point, North Carolina. Bodies were found more than a mile away from the main crash site. While the cause of the crash is under investigation, a Marine spokesperson said there is no suspicion of foul play. British Prime Minister Theresa May announced an investigation into what caused a blood contamination scandal that officials say killed 2,400 people in the UK in the 1970s and 80s. Thousands of National Health Service patients, many with hemophilia, received blood that was infected with the HIV virus and hepatitis C. Donors at the time included U.S. prisoners who were paid for their blood. The Philippine military says the death toll in Marawi is now more than 500. At least 380 of those are Islamic State-linked fighters, but 39 civilians have also been killed, and that number is expected to rise. More than 300,000 people have been displaced in the nearly two-month battle. Starting this school year, all public schools in Saudi Arabia will offer physical education for girls for the first time in the country's history. An advisory council approved the new course in 2014, but it wasn't implemented at the time because of a pushback from conservatives who considered it immodest. Even though no one can remember meeting him, plenty of people turned up to a party tonight in Washington's St. Regis Hotel to say goodbye to Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Kislyak will be replaced by Deputy Foreign Minister Anatoly Antonov, a hardliner currently under sanctions by the European Union for his role in stoking the Ukraine crisis.
Good morning. Emin just called and asked me to contact you with something very interesting. The Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father Aras this morning and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. This is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but it's part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump, helped along by Aras and Emin. What do you think is the best way to handle this information, and would you be able to speak to Emin about it directly? I can also send this info to your father via Rona, but it is ultra-sensitive, so wanted to send to you first. Best, Rob Goldston.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. I'm on the road at the moment, but perhaps I just speak to Emin first. Seems we have some time, and if it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer. Could we do a call first thing next week when I'm back? Best, Don.
Don, hope all is well. Emin asked that I schedule a meeting with you and the Russian government attorney who is flying over from Moscow for this Thursday. I believe you are aware of the meeting, and so wondered if 3 p.m. or later on Thursday works for you. I assume it would be at your office. Best, Rob Goldston.
Great. It will likely be Paul Manafort, campaign boss, my brother-in-law, and me. 725 Fifth Avenue, 25th floor.
It's less than 24 hours since I saw you last time. Thank you for coming back. But things have changed a little bit in this story since the last time I talked to you. And I just want to start out by talking about something that you told me yesterday. You said this.
I don't think there's anything necessarily illegal about that kind of arrangement of agreeing to meet with someone who may have information that would be useful to your campaign because it would be harmful to your opponent's campaign.
How do you feel about this now?
I'm in a state of shock over these emails because they seem quite incriminating to me. He seems to get excited at the prospect of a Russian government agent providing the Trump campaign with information that would be useful to the Trump campaign. Accepting such information, I think, could indeed run afoul of the federal election laws, which prohibit the acceptance of contributions or anything of value from foreigners.
Yesterday, before you had seen these emails, you were very careful about saying, we don't know, maybe there's illegality, maybe there isn't. And today you come in here and you say incriminating.
It's as though they were sort of going through the elements of the violation of federal election law. Check that off. Check that off. Yes, from a foreigner. Yes, helpful to your campaign. It would be valuable to your campaign.
Yeah.
And the response from Donald Trump Jr. seemed to be enthusiasm rather than any concern.
Would any lawyer advise Donald Trump Jr. to release these emails?
Well, I want to acknowledge that the lawyer that Donald Trump Jr. just hired is not sort of a standard issue Washington white-collar crime lawyer. My understanding is he actually has represented folks in New York rather than D.C. and has represented folks who've been involved in, mafia prosecutions. So it may be that there are different norms for that kind of lawyer, but I'm not aware of there being different norms, and I can't imagine why a standard issue white-collar defense lawyer would think it was a good idea for a client to publicize this, to produce this information.
Does it matter if Donald Trump Jr. had no idea what the federal election law was?
Oh, no. Ignorance of the law, right, doesn't excuse you from violating the law.
Is this the kind of thing that would be put into the existing Mueller investigation, or is this like a whole new investigation? I
imagine that this is certainly within the scope of that investigation, right? Because what we're talking about here is further evidence that Russia interfered with or participated in the U.S. election by providing information that would be useful to the Trump campaign.
President Trump issued a statement applauding his son's transparency. But the disclosure may be making life even easier for special counsel Robert Mueller, whose growing team looks like the Ocean's 11 of investigative know-how. Mueller hasn't said a word yet, but his hiring spree speaks volumes. Here are some of the heavy hitters.
Michael Dreeben, the all-star solicitor. Dreeben is a criminal law expert who's argued more than 100 cases in front of the Supreme Court as a member of the Office of the Solicitor General. He's argued in front of the court every year since 1989 and has overseen the Solicitor General's criminal docket since '94. Andrew Weissman, the corporate crime specialist. Weissman is on loan from the Justice Department's Criminal Fraud Unit, which he joined in 2015. He's had a storied career as a criminal prosecutor, including prosecuting mob cases against the Gambino and Colombo families, and corporate crime cases against Enron, Volkswagen, and Merrill Lynch. Lisa Page, the gangbuster. Page worked in the Justice Department's Organized Crime and Gang section. She has experience with Eastern European organized crime and money laundering and has prosecuted Bulgarian nationals and American organized crime families. Aaron Zebley, the FBI hotshot. Zebley was Mueller's chief of staff at the FBI and also his colleague at WilmerHale. Zebley's a cybersecurity and terrorism expert. At the FBI, he investigated al-Qaeda after the 9/11 attacks and has spent time undercover exposing terrorist plots. James Quarles, the been-there-done-that litigator. Quarles is a Watergate veteran who served as assistant to the special prosecutor from 1973 to 1975, specializing in campaign finance research. Since then, he's focused on intellectual property and business law at WilmerHale, arguing complex civil cases, often before the Supreme Court. He's also donated $33,000 to Democrats. Jeannie Rhee, the financial crimes ace. Rhee is another WilmerHale colleague who served as a deputy assistant attorney general under Eric Holder during the Obama administration. In private practice, Rhee specialized in white-collar crime as a member of Wilmer's group advising clients under investigation, including cases of national security breaches. Rhee defended the Clinton Foundation against a conservative activist group's lawsuit over Hillary Clinton's email server. This team will potentially face Trump's own legal squad, headed by a new lawyer, Jay Sekulow, an appellate litigator who has argued before the Supreme Court, but has nowhere near the accomplishments of Mueller's team. Mueller is said to be hiring more team members as the investigation grows. And Trump's team is taking them seriously. How do you know? Even some of Trump's lawyers are hiring lawyers.
Baseless claims about a link between vaccines and developmental disorders have fueled the so-called anti-vaxxer movement for years now. But in Texas, the anti-vaxxers are motivated by something else, an unconditional commitment to personal freedom, even at the expense of public health.
A parent decides whether their children get vaccinated or not. That is it in a nutshell.
In 2003, about 2,000 kids in Texas held exemptions, allowing them to opt out of vaccinations for non-medical reasons. Today, that number has risen to almost 45,000. More than 20 vaccine-related bills were introduced in the recently completed 85th Texas legislative session. And while some of those bills promote vaccinations, others definitely don't. 31-year-old Republican State Representative Briscoe Cain is a member of the state's Freedom Caucus.
Why is the debate about vaccines so strong in Texas? Is this something specific to Texas?
It's kind of something in our history, in our DNA, that we desire to be free from government intervention in our lives.
From your perspective, what's the vaccine choice debate about?
The parent should have the ability to decide whether or not their child takes medicine or receives an injection. It's about liberty.
So it's not about vaccines themselves or their safety?
For some it is. For me personally, it has nothing to do with the science or debating the science of vaccines.
Do you get vaccines yourself?
I do.
Do you have children?
I do. And they've been vaccinated.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up getting the flu shot every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's purely, but it was at my own choosing.
Some vaccines are only like 97% protective. So hypothetically, if your child were to get the measles from a child who wasn't vaccinated, how would you feel about that?
It's troubling that my child got the measles.
I mean, there's an outbreak right now in Minnesota.
I believe that personal liberty, or my personal liberty, stops at the person of another.
What about when a person's personal liberty infringes on somebody else's safety?
I believe that in the hierarchy of rights, that liberty is higher than safety and security.
When Briscoe talks about fighting for parental rights, it's people like Stacey Methin that he has in mind.
This is an exemption form. This is for me and my son.
She's previously filed exemptions for her 11-year-old son, Christian, the youngest of her 5 children. Christian hasn't received any vaccines since he was 6.
Could you walk me through some of the documents that are in here?
This one is one of the first ones that I actually went and researched. And it talks about the role of the federal government. But it doesn't give them the right to mandate vaccines. We have a right on this planet to choose for our own bodies what we take in. And it should be the same way with a shot or treatments.
In Texas, non-medical or conscientious exemptions from vaccines can be granted for any personal reason, including religion. Stacey is studying to be a nurse. She claims that 2 of her grandchildren were injured after getting vaccinated.
My attitude with life as well as vaccines is that if you believe in it, you push for it. It's hard for me.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to think of a future where other children would lose their rights and continue to be injured when none of us knows why.
Do you think that's a possibility? Do you worry about your rights being taken away?
I worry about the rights of my children and all of the other children out there.
Help get the eggs?
Okay.
Heather and David Pencil are worried too, but for a different reason. They live in the Austin suburbs, where public school districts have some of the highest exemption rates in the state. And private school exemption rates run as high as 40%.
The fact that you live in Austin instead of New York City, for instance, puts your family more at risk.
Yeah.
What happens if there's a measles outbreak here?
Bar the doors!
Right, yeah,
So, say baby is younger than 6 months. I would genuinely be concerned because measles is a serious disease. I mean, it can cause encephalitis, it can cause deafness, lots of things.
A bill introduced this year would have made exemption rates for individual schools publicly available. But in May, that bill stalled out in the state legislature after the Freedom Caucus opposed it for infringing on personal privacy.
How does it make you feel that the debate right now is people putting their privacy above other people's health safety?
It's a privilege issue. They are more concerned about their children than the risk of the greater population. And it's a false risk. Because that information is already available at that level.
It's already being collected.
Yeah, I mean,
you just wish that you could just...
Yeah, it should be available to parents. It's a public health issue.
Peter Hotez, a vaccine expert and dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at the Baylor College in Houston, has been contending with dangers of the vaccine choice movement in Texas for years.
A group of anti-vaccine activists have somehow convinced a large number of people in the state of Texas that this is a civil libertarian issue. And I don't accept that. What about the civil liberties of a young mother, a young parent in the Austin, Texas area? If I'm a mother of a young baby under the age of 12, because we don't vaccinate kids till 12 to 15 months with measles, I'd be terrified. If you're a parent, you're required by law to strap your child in a seatbelt in the car, right? That's not a parental choice. If you own a gun, and a lot of people in Texas own guns, you're required to lock that gun if you have a child at home. Right. And it's the same for vaccines.
Is there anything in Texas right now that could stop that from happening, stop outbreaks from happening?
We could proactively block outbreaks from happening tomorrow. And it's very simple. All we have to do is what was done in California when they had measles outbreaks. The state legislature finally woke up and they said, oh my God, what have we done? And they closed all the non-medical exemptions. And guess what? Vaccine coverage rate went up and problem solved.
Do you see that happening in Texas?
I don't, and I've been saying this now, and it's very sad that the only thing that's going to stop this runaway train right now is a large measles outbreak.
Today, Attorney General Jeff Sessions attended a gathering of D.A.R.E, the infamous 80s-era anti-drug program that, amazingly, is still around.
D.A.R.E became fundamental to our success by educating children to the dangers of drug use. I firmly believe that your work saved lives.
Sessions, the Rip Van Winkle of the war on drugs, apparently slept through the 4-decade losing battle fought with ill-conceived policies like D.A.R.E, a propaganda initiative that dared kids to abstain from drugs, narc on their parents and friends, and follow the lead of teen idol Nancy Just Say No Reagan.
I will say no to harmful drugs. I will help my friends say no. I will pledge to stand up for what I know is right.
All while blowing billions in taxpayer money. D.A.R.E was founded in 1983 by LAPD Chief Daryl Gates, who once said that casual drug users, quote, ought to be taken out and shot.
We're going to condemn those people who casually use drugs in this nation.
But kids could avoid summary execution by studying the D.A.R.E curriculum. Employing a soccer mom's idea of youth culture, D.A.R.E used music. Buff and pantless lions.
How to resist drugs and violence and react to bullying or any other threat.
And rapping straight-edge bears.
So take it from Yogi, doing drugs is gross. You can get in trouble from even one dose.
Shockingly, none of this halted the advance of teen drug use. A 2001 Surgeon General report on D.A.R.E said the program, quote, consistently showed little or no deterrent effect on substance use. But the program wasn't completely ineffective. A number of studies found that D.A.R.E programs could produce a boomerang effect, resulting in increased teen drug use. The negative publicity eventually caught up with D.A.R.E. Participation declined and federal funding disappeared. D.A.R.E shifted away from the just say no approach and claims its new programs are more effective. But Attorney General Sessions is nostalgic for the old days.
The D.A.R.E team is ready to meet this new challenge, no doubt about it.
It's summertime, when TV networks roll out their biggest, dumbest programming. Dexter Thomas visited the Orson Welles of primetime game shows as he unveiled his latest masterpiece.
This is TV's version of Candy Crush, the mobile game juggernaut. CBS is adding the live audience game show, hosted by Mario Lopez, to its hot weather lineup. The first episode aired on Sunday. It's almost exactly the same game as on your phone, except here, teams of 2 players compete against a giant interactive game board. Behind the scenes is a hitmaker named Matt Kunitz, who the LA Times once called the king of reality TV.
Ron, we're gonna change the comment. John Tushnader, we're gonna...
He's the person who brought America family television classics like Fear Factor and Wipeout. Kunitz thinks his newest show will be a crowd pleaser too, but it might not make everybody happy.
Critics don't like your shows. Yeah, I don't care. I mean, I really don't. It's not for the critics. Yo, people have said, this is stupid. This is lowest common denominator TV. Like, this is stuff that people say.
If you program for the critics, if you try to make movies, television, music for the critics, like, they're not the masses. So I have to think about the broad audience, millions of people out there. And I have to sort of find what is that sweet spot that millions of people are going to enjoy. There's many shows you can watch that are there to be thought-provoking. Mm-hmm. Probably your show, right?
I like to think so.
I don't think that the shows that I do are really designed for, I'm going to go and I'm going to be, intellectually challenged watching this show. You come to my shows because you want to have a good time.
Kunitz and his team spent more than 2 years in pre-production trying to figure out how to move the game from mobile phones to TV. And the game stayed the same. Sort of.
All right. You been in a harness before?
Not like this.
What harness have you been in?
Let's not talk about that.
All right.
Family TV show.
The way this challenge works is we're gonna be harnessed from up there, from that gantry. We're gonna have these 2 big, giant hands that are attached to these sticks. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! And we have to make matches with them. This always reminds me, have you seen the movie Half-Baked?
Yes.
You know, when they get real high, they're just floating around?
Nice.
Being a contestant on this show is pretty challenging, especially if you're afraid of heights. But if you've played a lot of Candy Crush, you do have an advantage.
Has there been anybody who's just been, yo, why are you so good at this game?
Yeah. There's
Really?
also been some people that have been like, yo, why are you so bad at this game?
Really?
Yeah.
All right, guys, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, and then boom.
3, 2, and applause, everybody!
Since the original Candy Crush was launched in 2012, gamers across the world have played 1 trillion rounds. The TV show might not get that popular. But Kunitz has a track record of producing shows American families want to watch, and he might be onto something here.
Do you think Candy Crush is it? Do you think other mobile games could be adapted for TV?
Well, hopefully this is going to be a big hit, and if it is, then watch out, because every network will start saying, let's look at those mobile games, and you'll start seeing a lot more. It's just the way it works.
Are you worried about imitators?
No, if you're doing good work, then it doesn't really matter. Like, someone else can come along and do something similar. I mean, no one else can come and do Candy Crush, right? People have tried to do Wipeout. They've tried to do Fear Factor. I think if you're first to the game, you're going to be pretty safe.
Okay, everybody, let's make this a good show.
Oh my gosh. This is cool.
If you need to keep time on me, if you need to keep time.
Fleet Foxes. I knew that reverb right away on the guitar is crazy. I haven't heard that. It's they got a sound. I love that if you need to keep time on me.
Yeah, that's
Strong.
awesome.
Strong.
That's good.
That is not what I thought they sounded like either. I thought it was like Linkin Park and Steve Aoki at first. Like I thought that's what when I hear those guys are getting together, that's what I think that's what it would sound like. Where are they from?
They're from Canada.
Canada's cool, by the way. I think if I had committed a crime and I was in an interrogation room and they played that, I would talk.
Damn, it's cold.
So long, love letter, but you and I gotta live forever.
There's a theme that's happening, and it just keeps coming up with this living forever, and we're gonna be forever young. It just spews out of everybody. It's not true.
Newsflash, median age is around 84 years old.
And if you smoke cigarettes, it's even less than that.
Once I was alive and I could feel it. I was holding on to you.
This is good. This is so good, and it's nutritious, I think.
This has good calories, complete protein. Yeah. All the amino acids.
I wish I was in the war on drugs.
Can we join the war on drugs, please?
Can we be in your band?
That's Vice News Tonight for Tuesday, July 11th.